Continue speaking. Thank you, Lisa. So right now we're going to hear about from the Integrated Planning Improvement Project team. We have Adam Karp, Elisa Shub, and Chris Olson. So please welcome them.
There they are. So good afternoon, everybody. I really wanted to blame somebody. I was thinking of maybe blaming Thomas Green for me being up here at this moment, taking the chancellor's traditional spot of standing, as he always says, between you and lunch. So I wanted somebody to blame, but honestly, it's my own fault, because all last semester I was saying, we have this new integrated planning system, and people are using it, and they're going to need to use it in the spring, and so we need to be talking about this. So it's me here talking about this. So So integrated planning at American River College. I thought I'd start off with a brief history. I'll try to keep this brief. So once upon a time, meaning about last year, what most of us probably understood about integrated planning at American River College probably came from a story that we might have memorized for accreditation that went a little something like this. Every 6 years, we do program review, and that forms the foundation for every 3 years, we do SLO assessment, which forms the foundation for every year we do the EMP. And then, of course, there's other stuff we do here at the college, and it's all integrated. That's probably the story we know. You might have, there we go. You might remember a diagram that looked a little bit something like this. I think we had it in boxes in the ITC. So this was integrated planning. However, for years, the Program Review Committee, which is a committee of the Academic Senate, had been listening to us, listening to faculty feedback that basically said we could do this better. Faculty wanted a program review process that was more streamlined, easier to use, that it was relevant to all of the programs, yes, and would actually support data-informed conclusions, and that fundamentally was meaningful. That none of us want to do that busy work that we have to do for accreditation purposes, make a report, and then it sits on the proverbial shelf for another 6 years. So we wanted this work to be meaningful. So that's where so once the new governance system came about, woo, yeah, okay. We gotta make this like, Microsoft for Apple. One of the first project teams that was developed was the Integrated Planning Improvement Project team. And these are the folks who served on that team, and I really, really want to thank them and give them a round of applause. Because this was a great team. This was a really great team to work with, and they produced fantastic results. So this team was formed last year, and it was charged with designing a comprehensive institutional planning process that aligns and links all levels of college-wide planning, from strategic master planning at the real high level to program review and unit planning at the department level. It was also charged with ensuring that each planning level was integrated and highly effective. And I'm trying to scroll so I can read the whole mission, yes. And it also incorporated, where applicable, effective linkages to resource allocation. This group worked together and did exactly that, revised the program review process and developed a integrated planning guide. So you're asking, okay, it's 2019, project team is done. What does integrated planning look like now? I want to give you some highlights. First of all, you got to applaud, no more EMP. Yay! We're not doing us cheers, all right? Also, a highlight is that we'll be doing program review now every 7 years instead of 6. This is the result of a change of the accreditation process, and what it does is it allows us to take a gap year where no programs will be needing to do program review during the year that we do our college-wide accreditation report. So that will free us a lot of work up for us. Yeah. We also developed a one-stop planning portal. I'll show you a little preview of this in a minute. One place where we can go to submit our plans, and the interface has really changed to make it a lot easier, to make it a lot more make sense. Everything that you need related to your department's planning is all in one place. There's going to be data that you can find and use. So certain data sets specific to your department will be regularly available every single year for you. You can look at these data sets. And then other data will be readily available through the portal. And lastly, what I think is really important is that there's real integration with planning. That the planning that we'll be doing, conversations at your department will be about what it is that you want to accomplish and how you are going to accomplish it. And then this information will be useful for the college in general. So this is a little look at what the program review and unit planning cycle looks like. So you can see in the red, program review happens every 7 years. And then in between, you can see something in the blue we're calling the annual unit plan. This takes place every year in between the program review cycles. Fundamentally, program review is a look back, a review at what we've done, and it's also in establishing a vision for the future. The annual unit plans are an annual update of the program review. So with those unit plans, what we're doing is we're looking at what is it that we want to accomplish each individual year towards achieving our vision for our department, or we call them units. And as we input things into the annual unit plan, the system keeps track of what we've put in, so that when we get to the next program review cycle, all of the things that we've recorded, the actions that we've been taking each year, will be pre-populated into the program review. So that reflexive part of the program review, reflective when we look back, that work will have been done for us through our annual unit planning. So this is just a little extra description of the program review and unit planning cycle and how this program review and unit planning actually connects to the college. So program review every 7 years assesses the program, creates measurable objectives, a vision for the future, and then aligns these objectives to the ARC commitment for social justice and equity. So that's our long-term commitment there. And then the annual unit plan, which documents action steps, which are informed by data. These are aligned to the ARC strategic goals. So in this way, the college, we can see how what we're doing at a department level is contributing to the strategic goals. And then the annual unit plan also will identify resources to support these action steps. So just a little preview or idea of what program review now looks like. There are 4 parts to the program review, and then there's the annual unit plan update. So the 4 parts begin with a unit profile, and that's your description of your department or unit and what its function is and how that fits with the college. Assessment and analysis is the looking at the actions that you've taken over the past years and looking at the data and seeing what does that data say? What do our past actions and data say? Reflection and dialogue is department level group discussion over what the assessment and analysis means. How do you interpret that information? And then strategic enhancement is establishing that vision for where you want your department to be or to remain in the future. And then the annual unit plan, which we're going to hear a little bit more about later, is that annual update. So this is just a little preview of what you would see if you were doing program review. You would be logging into this. This is the integrated planning portal. And if you had been identified as a lead for your department or unit, you would enter your Los Rios ID and your universal password, and the system would recognize you, and you'd log in and it would say, guess what, you're due for program review. And then I'm not going to show you all the links in the portal, but this is just gives you an idea of the interface. This last box over here, this one down at the bottom, just gives you an idea of what it is that you would be doing in the program review. Each one of those 4 parts are 2 questions that are text boxes. So you're just answering the way you see fit and recording your program review that way. So this system looks pretty exciting here. And just give you an idea of how the program review goes. Our very first cohort started off in October with a training session. They were assigned quality enhancement support team. So there are people actually devoted to each program, helping the program do its work. In November, they began with their group assessment and analysis. December, the reflection and dialogue. And that brings us around to, gives us quite a bit of time moving into this semester here, where they'll actually be drafting their program review and checking in with the Quest meeting. So this has already happened with our first cohort for program review. Now you're wondering though, what about me? Can I participate in this integrated planning thing? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, you can. I know, you were wondering that. Because in February, the annual unit planning will be opening. The board will be opening up for annual unit planning, and then program review, annual unit plan are due in mid-March. So this gives you the rest of the timeline here of what happens. This is meaningful to us all right now because even if you are not scheduled to be part of the program review cohort going through this year, you have available to you annual unit planning. So the portal will be open for you to do this unit planning. And Adam is going to talk more about annual unit planning and what it is that we're going to be doing, and he's going to show you a little preview of the portal. But what it's important to remember is that annual unit planning is an opportunity for your departments to begin having conversations about what you want to do this year, and then be documenting those plans. Documenting for your own records, but also documenting for records for the college. So just as an example, I'm from the speech department, and in speech, we might say, well, this year we know that based on the data, that we want to serve students a little bit better by writing some new curriculum. So we would be putting that in our annual unit plan, and so forth. So let's just hear from Adam a little bit more about annual unit planning.
Hi, my name's Adam Karp. I'm the Dean for Planning, Research, and Technology. And I just want to say before I launch into this that I'm really, really excited about the work of the project team as an example of the good work of the new governance structure and the system that we have designed as an institution. In addition, it really is an amazing example of what we identified through the accreditation process as one of our own self-identified improvement areas, which was on integrated planning. And so what has come out of that is really is demonstrated by the work of the team that you saw represented under the leadership of Kuldeep and as well Elisa. And so I wanted to mention that as well. I want to talk about you're going to see some screens that you'll have the opportunity to interact with in the system, and that is, it's just an amazing example of collaboration between the team as well as engagement with institutional research and our IT department as well, and the developers, because this was a system that was built by our staff here at the college. So with that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, yes. Yeah. So annual unit planning. Who participates in annual unit planning? For this audience, I'm going to focus on the bottom section there. This is a page out of the Integrated Planning Guide to show that we're really talking about departments. And when I say department, I'm going to, at the same breath, transition to the word unit, because we're talking about units. And whether they be instructional units, as many of you all are involved in, or student support services units, or administrative support services units, you know, we essentially have three groups of different kinds of units at the college, and the system will know which unit you're in and will provide you with the types of screens that you need that are applicable to the work that you're being asked to do. So here's a look at the integrated planning portal. And I want to emphasize we're talking about integrated planning. So you heard Elisa describe the program review process, and you saw a little bit about what that looks like and the integration now between annual unit planning as a way to inform at an institutional level. We can look vertically across the institution where the work is and where the plans are, be able to collect that data for other additional future planning. So in the system, there's an opportunity to select annual unit planning under the drop-down menu, and note that with a due date of March 15th. And then the next page takes you to step-by-step what it is that you'll be doing. So firstly, reviewing your unit's standard data set that was provided for you. And the beauty of this, you're going to see Chris Olson, one of our research analysts, talk about a little bit more about key aspects of that data set that you'll be provided specific for your unit. So you don't have to go hunting around, searching around for the data. It will be provided for you. Secondly, to support ARC strategic planning goals and address data issues by adding planning objectives and action steps. So really there's two things that are going on here that you're being asked to do. To respond to this institutional data set, and then secondly, to write action steps that demonstrate the work that you are doing in your unit to advance the work of the college's strategic plan. There's two things. So the data set and then work on the strategic plan. Review your planning objective summary, and then identify any resources where needed. So the difference here, if I could just make a observation, in that old EMP that's no longer with us, essentially that was a means to, in some I've heard describe it as a means to a shopping list of things the department wanted to get. This is really about planning. What are the plans? What are you doing in your department that are actions you are committing yourself to address the data that's been provided for you? Then secondly, what are you doing in your unit that's going to advance the work on a particular objective or several objectives of the college's strategic plan? Lastly, if there are any resources you need to support that work, you can identify those. But the emphasis is on the planning. And then you submit. So step one, here's a sample of what the institutional data set will look like. And you'll see these flags, red, green, yellow. We've used this system to pre-process the data, and Chris will talk a little bit more about that. Pre-review, pre-analyze the data for you, and alert you to areas in your data that require attention. So if it's red, that's something for you to focus on. If it's yellow, you're close to that threshold, then 3%. If it's green, at this point, at least for your unit, it hasn't crossed that threshold that would require attention. So the 4 items in the standard data set are enrollment, at this point at least, enrollment, productivity, disproportionately impacted groups, and department set standards. We're going to dive into a little bit more into disproportionately impacted groups in a little bit. Second part of the process then is to show how you're supporting the strategic planning goals and addressing those data issues. So if you choose to select at this point a particular data issue that's been identified for your unit, you would do so. And to use the example of what we saw just a moment ago, disproportionately impacted groups, in this case you see there's a red circle there for the last 3 years of fall and spring semesters. When you click on it, it'll actually take you to your data, but I'm not going to show you that right now. You get to wait and see what that looks like. And so you drop down the arrow, select I need to address for my unit the disproportionate impact data set, and then you would go on to write the action step. I'm going to turn it over to Chris right now to dive into explaining what we mean by disproportionate impact. That's one of the major focuses of this system. Chris.
So Adam showed you the 4 standard data sets that we have integrated now into the program review, the annual unit plan processes that comprise the brand new integrated planning system. The focus, since most of you completely understand an enrollment report and frequently look at them, most of you also understand what a productivity report is about, and this is our second year in reporting the department set standards at the department level of detail. This is an ACCJC required activity. We've operationalized this both at the college level and at departments. So we won't go into detail on that one, but we wanted to focus some attention on what disproportionate impact means. It's a term that's bandied about regularly. Disproportionate impact essentially is a tool that we've been using for the last 4 years at the recommendation of the State Chancellor's Office to identify those groups that are negatively impacted and that should be the focus of our student equity planning processes. The Chancellor's Office has come up with a new and improved methodology. I think we have 4 of them now, but it's important to note that these methodologies are not mutually exclusive, that they are complementary. They measure disproportionate impact from different perspectives. So we may see one group disproportionately impacted using one methodology, but not in another. So it's valuable for us to look at those multiple methodologies, and our reporting will in fact reflect that. You'll see a couple definitions up here. The second bullet shows something lifted directly from the State Chancellor's Office equity guidelines. I think this sort of puts disproportionate impact into perspective for you. A couple examples that I can provide, for instance, if a given population, an ethnicity, a gender, et cetera, comprises 50% of the student headcount at the college, and that particular population only earns about 10% of the degrees, let's say, at the college. There's something there. We refer to that as a disproportionate impact. Or let's say you're using an assessment test, and for 2 different groups, one group places, say, 50% at the transfer level, whereas the other group only places at, say, 10% at the transfer level. Again, a disproportionate impact, but that gives you some sense for what we're talking about. We have developed the reports that we've integrated in this system primarily at the course designator level of detail. We refer to that the subject area, or subject code is how it shows up in our database. And there are, when we looked at the data from fall 14 to spring 18, there are 119 different subject codes or course designators here at ARC. And I've got a couple quick quiz questions for you. Of those 119, how many do you think show a disproportionate impact for white students? What would you guess? Maybe show of hands. More than 20? More than 20? How about somewhere between 10 and 20? Less than 10. Who guesses 0? 0 is correct. Not a single one of the 119 different course designators show a disproportionate impact for white students. Now, the other end of the spectrum, when we do our disproportionate impact work, there is one group on campus that is particularly consistently disproportionately impacted across the college. And my second quiz question is, how many of those 119 do you believe there is a disproportionate impact for African American students? Let's say we'll start the bidding at more than 20. Yeah? More than 30. More than 40. And this is of 119. More than 50. I see his thumb pointing up. Well, this in fact this represents our 119, and you can see that 79 of 119, 66% of all of those course designators have a disproportionately impacted African American student population. You can see this graph represents all 119 course designators, and you can see the overlay shows that 2/3 are disproportionately impacted. What is probably even more concerning is that these 79 course designators reflect 90% of all the grades awarded by to African American students. So let me say that a different way. Grades equate to classes, so 90% of the classes that African American students are taking are in those 79 course designators where there is measurable disproportionate impact. So something to think about. So when we hear this concern about disproportionate impact discussed on campus, and we take light of the statistics, it's probably not just that department over there. It's probably your department. And so I would suggest that when you're going through the annual unit planning process or program review, you should not be shocked if you see a yellow or a red dot next to the disproportionate impact report. I'd like to move on to data integration, since this is an integrated system. Adam mentioned that we're integrating horizontally. He also mentioned that we're integrating vertically by collecting the data, compiling it in a SQL database, and then allowing our developer, Ina Linnick, was the primary developer in the system, our IT person, to gather that data and provide reports, for instance, for the professional development project team, for the operations council, for groups that could benefit from this information, so that we're integrating vertically as well. The data integration aspect we've already alluded to. However, it's important to note that when you click one of these links, such as fall or spring, it will feed your course designator to the database, and what you'll receive is your report, your department's report, not a landing page from which you have to select 12 parameters as well as your department. It gives you your report. And the logic of how it is we determine whether it's a green, yellow, or red dot that appears next to the report link is shown in the expandables. So if you click one of the little plus signs, it rolls down and will actually show you that logic. And by and large, it's if your enrollment this fall is the same or greater than it was last fall, it's green. If it's down but less than 10 percentage points, yellow. If it's 10 percentage points or more down from last year, then it would be red. With that, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to emphasize that when we're talking about this data set, we're talking about instructional areas. So a unit such as counseling, for example, would not have a data set that would be similar to this. So it's relative to the particular type of unit that you're in. So to finish out what the experience is like, of course, referencing the strategic plan, I mentioned we were responding in the annual unit plan to a data set, which we've just talked about. Now, this is the second thing, so response that the unit has to advancing work on the strategic plan. And so in alignment with those four goals in the strategic plan, you select in the system which one you're addressing. Alternatively, to the left of that box where it says goal supported planning objective, you can just select the particular planning objective. This list of planning objectives here is pulled out of the discrete statements that comprise the four goals in the strategic plan. So you focus in on not broadly one of those goals, but specifically one of those elements within the goal, so we can be more precise in our planning. So in this example, what's been clicked on is teach culturally relevant curriculum. From there, you're presented with a box to type in what is it that the unit is doing as an action step to address that particular item. Lastly, you will come to a screen where if there are any resources that are needed, which may or may not be the case for a particular planning objective and action steps. In this case, a unit has selected the third one, professional development required. And so that will be the final step before then submitting the plan. So I'm going to turn it back over to Elisa to talk about just this notion of an integrated planning guide, and we'll wrap up. Thank you very much.
So if you haven't figured it out already, there's a lot of planning, Right, a lot of planning, and it's not just us at the department and unit level planning, but there's college-wide plans. You've heard about all kinds of plans. So I wanted to show you just real quickly a touch of the work of the other part of the work of the Integrated Planning Improvement Team. This is the Integrated Planning Guide. It's a 28-page document. I will not go through all 28 pages, but I just will show you the table of contents, which shows all of the different plans that we are working on at the college. And what this guide does is it actually explains how these plans come about, who is responsible for the plans, what the plans, the focus of the plans are, and when the plans get revised and created. So this calendar, I know it's small, but you can see there's a lot of planning happening here. This is a calendar that spaces out all of our plans and lets us know in advance when plans are due and when they are scheduled to be revised and so forth. So this document will be going through the executive leadership team, and it'll be posted on our webpage pretty soon, and you can read all 28 pages because I'm sure you're pretty excited to do so. So as we're almost to lunch, you're asking, what now? What do we do? Well, the important thing for all of us in this room right now is to be on the lookout for emails about annual unit planning, because that's going to be the first step as we individually participate in this planning process. Thank you all for listening to this exciting topic, and hope you have a wonderful semester and lunch. Gary, can I just dismiss them? You are dismissed.